Now on this channel, we normally don't do back-to-back uploads. However, the whole Kawhi Leonard situation is a little too juicy and scandalous for us to just overlook, while also having some very real implications moving forward on how the dynamic between players and owners will plan out for the next several years, especially because if this story is true, it will go down as the biggest story that the NBA has seen in the past 10 years and easily one of the biggest stories in NBA history. And I don't just say that lightly just so you can stay and watch the video. No, this is a very serious story. So with that being said, the only way to truly understand the severity of this story is if you go watch the hour-long video that Pablo Torre has uploaded on his channel. He is the one who broke the news. Not only do I want you to go watch that video to understand all the details, but also to support real journalism. So huge shout out to Pablo Torre. Go check that video out. However, also know that everyone does not have an hour of time to give because it is a very lengthy video where you probably have to rewatch certain things to get a thorough understanding of what exactly is going on. And so in this video, I'm going to try to do my best to give you some of the more important factors while also potential ramifications, as well as my overall thoughts of everything that's happening. So for those who aren't aware, what exactly is being alleged? Because at its core, it's a fairly simple situation. You have Steve Ballmer, the owner of the Los Angeles Clippers, using a fraudulent company by the name of Aspiration to circumvent the salary cap to pay Kawhi Leonard $28 million under the table. What is really problematic and what is not alleged is the company Aspiration being fraudulent, because not only have they filed for bankruptcy, a co-founder of the company who had a direct relationship with Steve Ballmer has already pled guilty to a fraud charge to the tune of $240+ million. And yes, if we have the screenshot on the screen, this is with the feds. The FBI was investigating into this. So this isn't some local stuff. No. The feds are involved. Let's be clear here. I want everybody to understand this. In NBA terms, and this is a silly, fun story, but this could get very serious very quickly if Steve Ballmer knew as much information as potentially has been outlined in some of the other investigations. Now, how exactly did we get here? Aspiration was a company that helped their clients manage their carbon footprint by planting trees in their name. And the way in which they made money through this process is simply upcharging the entire process. Normally we only take around 10 to 15 cents. However, Aspiration was charging a whole $1 each tree for their clients. Now, Steve Ballmer learns about this company in late of 2021, and in the most optimistic lens that I could put this through, Steve Ballmer learns about the company. He's very excited to work alongside with them. He's bought into their vision, and he starts investing tens of millions of dollars into Aspiration. Matter of fact, he is bought in so much so that he wants Aspiration to sponsor the Clippers. And so you start to see Aspiration logos being plastered all throughout the arena, as well as they're having a deal that potentially down the line, Aspiration would be a team sponsor with the patch on the jersey. That's how invested he was in this company. Now, when does Kawhi get attached to this company? Literally a few months later. So again, Steve Ballmer learns about this company toward the tail end of 2021. At the same time, Kawhi signs a 4-year contract extension. A few months later, Kawhi lands a new endorsement deal through Aspiration. A few months later, Kawhi makes a brand new LLC by the name of KL2 Aspire. Yes, it's that simple, which then he uses to get paid his endorsement deal through Aspiration. And we know this to be the case because when they had to file for bankruptcy, Aspiration had to give a list of all the creditors that they still owed money to. And on this list was KL2 Aspire, who they still owed $7 million to. And $7 million is the exact amount of money that they will have to owe in the last year of their $28 million brand ambassador deal that they signed with Kawhi. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, all of this could just be chalked up to a massive coincidence, especially because there still isn't any direct ties from Kawhi to Aspiration back to the Clippers, as well as Kawhi just landing a normal brand deal with an organization that was probably building and growing around the city. That's not that big of a deal. However, this is where some of the evidence starts to become a little bit more detailed and, quite frankly, a lot of red flags. First, Kawhi received ridiculous special treatment in contrast to everyone else, not only because he received significantly more money than all the other brand ambassadors combined 4 times over, but effectively he earned $28 million to do absolutely nothing.
Among the endorsement agreements that these famous people, these celebrities were signing with Aspiration, where did the size of Kawhi Leonard's agreement, the $28 million over 4 years, where did that rank?
The single largest sponsorship deal that Aspiration ever made. Every other celebrity endorsement combined would not have met even a quarter of Kawhi Leonard's endorsement.
Did you ever see proof of Kawhi Leonard marketing or endorsing Aspiration in any way?
Never, not once.
Normally, when you were a brand ambassador, you have requirements and responsibilities that you must adhere to make sure that you get your money that you signed for. However, in Kawhi's contract, they really weren't responsibilities or requirements. It were requests. We are requesting Kawhi to do nothing more but sign 50 autographs. We are requesting Kawhi to do nothing more than just take one photo or video each month. We are just requesting Kawhi to do nothing more but give us 5 organic interactions such as comments, likes, and retweets. Just 5. And you know what Kawhi does? None of them. Absolutely none of them. Now, the other problem with the whole situation is the only way to void this contract is if Kawhi no longer plays for the Clippers. And that's how it's connected, which is very, very strange. Normally, it's like a morality clause where, if you get arrested, you get hit with an allegation, then because of that, we can then retract the whole contract. But no, the only way to void and terminate this contract is if Kawhi no longer plays with the Clippers. So that right there were the 2 red flags. You're telling me that Steve Ballmer is sending money into the company, and then you also have a brand ambassador in Kawhi who isn't doing a single thing that is receiving the most amount of money in this company, and the only way to void this contract is if he no longer plays with the Clippers. That's interesting. Very, very interesting. The other part that was extremely interesting is that Kawhi, who again is doing absolutely nothing, still got his money regardless of the standing of the company. Now, again, this is a business that has filed for bankruptcy. So at some point, the company was going down. They were struggling and they were budgeting themselves accordingly, trying to make sure who they need to pay, how much they need to pay, and when they need to pay these people because they still had to put up this facade. But when it came to Kawhi, there was never any conversations or discussion. Kawhi was going to get paid on time, every time, to the full amount, regardless of what was going on with the company. But what's probably the biggest telltale sign and why a lot of people are frustrated is what actually happened before Kawhi landed with the Clippers. For those who may need me to jog your memory, back in 2019, Kawhi was a free agent fresh off of a very successful year for the Toronto Raptors. I don't know why I'm talking to this like y'all. Y'all understand what I'm saying? Kawhi went to the Raptors. They won a championship. He then decided to kick his feet up and start flying across the country trying to figure out which team he wanted to go to. And in doing so, it was reported that his uncle Dennis were making crazy demands. How crazy were these demands? Bro, this man was going around asking for part ownership of a team, private jets, houses, while also saying, I need guaranteed money as well beyond the contract that we're going to sign. Now, these were all allegations, and to be fair, they're still allegations. However, that is very crazy and very specific to ask, especially when other teams like the Lakers came out and straight up said, yeah, he did ask for that, and we end up declining it because, of course, that would go against the salary cap. Like, we can't do that. That would go against the CBA. We cannot do those things. So you're telling me that it was rumored that it was happening, and a couple of years later, we now have evidence of a potential paper trail that it actually occurred. Now, for those who do remember, you may be then saying, hey, but Lo, back in 2019, the NBA did an investigation on this and they said they found absolutely nothing. And you are right. You're absolutely right. But here's the thing. See, remember when I was telling you about Steve Ballmer getting involved with Aspiration and Aspiration signing Kawhi Leonard as a brand ambassador and Kawhi Leonard signing a contract extension? See, I said contract extension, not a new contract. This didn't happen in the summer of 2019. This happened in 2021. So any type of investigation that the NBA did in 2019, they would have found nothing because none of this stuff occurred at that point in time. This happened 2 years later. And to further prove this, Pablo has now came out and said that he's touched bases with some league sources and they've told him that they were unaware of the relationship that Kawhi had with Aspiration and Aspiration with Steve Ballmer because none of those things existed in 2019. These are things that they were not aware of. So yeah, back in 2019, you couldn't investigate this because it didn't happen yet. It happened happened 2 years later when he signed his contract extension that just so happened to be 4 years long, which is also just as long as it would take to pay off $28 million that was getting paid $7 million at a time annually. Again, all these are allegations. Nothing is directly tying Steve Ballmer to Kawhi, but there are a lot of things that are very coincidental that would certainly point in a direction that someone had to know something, because it's too blatantly obvious. Now, what exactly could be the disciplinary actions that could be taken? Because the NBA has now said that they are looking more into this and they're doing their own investigation. Well, many people are referencing an incident that happened in the late 90s between Joe Smith and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Just briefly, Joe Smith was a free agent. He was somewhat highly sought over, but decided to only sign a 1-year deal with the Minnesota Timberwolves, which really raised a lot of eyebrows because why not sign for anything longer? He did the exact same thing the following year and almost did it again one more season, but then the NBA decided to do a little bit more thorough investigation and quickly realized that the only reason why he was signing these small 1-year deals is to get to the 3-year threshold. And for those who are unaware, if you're on a team for longer than 3 years, then you then qualify for the bird rights. Then the Minnesota Timberwolves were going to give him a much larger salary, but they couldn't do that without going over the salary cap. And so the only way to do that is if they obtain his bird rights. That is against the rules. It's illegal. So David Stern, who was a commissioner at that time, voided his contract, fined the Minnesota Timberwolves, and took 5 first-round picks from them. 5. That is what's at stake right now. It's been rewritten in the rules of the CBA that the penalty isn't that steep. Yes, voiding a contract is still on the table. Yes, a fine is also on the table. And yes, some draft capital could potentially be taken away from them. However, you have to become a repeat offender in these terms to kind of hit to that level. And if there's only one contract that could be fraudulent or could have been influenced and sweetened in other regards, then there is a possibility that this could be filed as a one-time incident, which is a less penalty, no voiding of the contract, but there is one draft pick that will be taken away from them. So there's that potential outcome. However, I do believe at bare minimum, there should be a little bit more investigations going on with the Clippers, because not only did Kawhi take very manageable and effectively took pay cuts to play with the organization, but James Harden did the exact same thing as well. And then you have the whole Paul George debacle. Also, Doc Rivers was also involved with aspiration. Like, there's a lot of things that's going on with the Clippers that are always questionable. And of course, you kind of just let things kind of move as they go. But now that there has been a light shed on the whole Kawhi situation, it does beg the question, is Kawhi the only player on that team who's had some money dealt to them under the table? And based off of this information and how easy it is to kind of connect Kawhi to everything that's going on right now, as well as Steve Ballmer, I have a really hard time believing that this is not the only time that this has occurred with the Clippers. My personal thoughts on everything is that A, I do believe that these things occur pretty frequently in the NBA. There's way too much money to be thrown around, and with these new regulations set in place with luxury tax fines that are going up through the wazoo and now a first and second tax apron, yeah, I think that these are things that are occurring. But when we're talking about $28 million being paid underneath the table, and we're also talking about Kawhi Leonard being so damn lazy that he doesn't want to at least fake the funk and act as if like, oh man, you know, sign a little autographs here, I'll make a post there, I'll take a picture here, and bada boom, bada bang, I'm a real brand ambassador. But for you to not just do that, like you can't even fake it, dog. Like I see a lot of people upset, like, man, this nigga snitching. Pablo, he snitching. Pablo, why you snitching? It's like, bro, y'all not mad at Kawhi? Kawhi basically blew up the spot by not trying. There's a possibility that he just blew up the spot without trying, bro. This man, all he had to do was five interactions online, like, comment, tweet, retweet, like something. He did none of those things. 50 autographs, a picture a month. He did none of those things. I'm not going to be mad at the man that's snitching. I'm going to be mad at the man who made it easy for him to snitch on me. That's who I'm going to be mad at. Don't make a new LLC around the same time money is being handed over and you name the LLC KL2 Aspire. Don't do that. That's just dumb. And so I truly believe and I hope that they get made an example out of. Steve Ballmer makes too much money for him to be running around playing these type of games. And that's probably my biggest fear, is that we're now in this new space where the contract and money is getting so outrageous that owners who have been a part of the league for decades they can't even function anymore. Jeannie Buss and them had to give up a portion of the Lakers because they just like, they can't afford to keep up with this money that's being thrown around. Mark Cuban had to give up a portion of his share of what was going on out in Dallas. Can't keep up what's going on. But you know who ain't gonna have to change ownership anytime soon? Steve Ballmer, the sixth wealthiest man on this earth. He has an advantage that literally no one can touch. And so if that man is finding ways to pay people underneath the table, you gotta make an example out of him. And I do believe this could get very ugly very quickly. But hey, those are my thoughts. Please let me know yours in the comment section below. Hopefully this video isn't too long, but if it is what it is, dog. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, notification bell, and until next time, I'll see you all later. Peace.